Welcome to the Equinety Podcast, where horse owners just like you share their incredible Equinety stories and how Equinety is changing their horses' lives. Whether you're searching for something to give your performance horse better focus, faster recovery, and more stamina, or in the extreme case where all hope seems lost, give your horse what it needs to help heal at a cellular level, you'll find it here. So jump in on today's episode to hear how Equinety is helping horses worldwide. Now, welcome your host, John Dowdy.
I am so excited to share this podcast with you because the challenges that Jordan, our guest, has been through her personally with a potentially career-ending back injury, while at the same time, her really good barrel horse had a sympathy injury with a suspensory injury. So it's pretty amazing and very, very inspiring to anyone listening to this one. So without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome Jordan to the show.
Thank you, John. I'm really excited to be here and tell my story.
Good deal. Well, we are really excited. And I tell you what, when you shared this with me, my jaw was on the table more than a few times. So now, as we go back in let's give a little bit of history of how you started, which you started riding, hunter jumpers when you were around 5 years old. And as you told me, after 3 or 4 years, it just wasn't enough of an adrenaline rush for you. So you got into barrel racing.
Yes, I did.
And then you had picked up on that. It seemed to just come very natural to you. So then you started training your own horses. And then as you get into your late teens, you had a potentially career-ending back injury. Tell us about that.
I had a horse. I was roping that day, and we put a guy breezed the horse around the track, and told me to go put him on the hot walker to cool her off. And so I did that. I ponied her over there. So I tied my horse up to the corrals. I put her on the hot walker, and she just freaked out. She has been on it before. I don't know what happened that day. Never knowing with horses. But she did pull back, and I was trying to lower a little bit, and before I knew it, I just heard a big clamp, and I turned around halfway, and all of a sudden the hot walker, she pulled it down, and it hit my back, hit my neck, hit my L4 and L5, and my leg, and I laid there for about 10 minutes until they realized, that horse is loose, something happened.
Right. Oh, good night. So about 10 minutes in, so you're laying there trying to figure out what even happened.
Yes.
Wow. So. And
I looked up and I seen them looking in the pasture for me. And one guy rode over by the barn, and I was, screaming and crying to get this thing off of me.
No doubt. So you go get everything checked out. And what did they tell you at the hospital?
They tell me I broke my L4 and L5, and they didn't test me for any nerve damage. So they released me, and the night after, I had a really bad, shocking pain, and I tried to get out of bed, and that's when it happened. And I called one of my friends, and I told them to call 911. And my roommate finally heard me crying, and she ran downstairs. They called the 911, and the ambulance got there, and they took me back to the hospital the day after to find out that my left leg was paralyzed, I guess from trying to get up when I shouldn't have.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
But I shouldn't have been released out of the hospital.
No, it does not sound like it. So you are now paralyzed from the waist down, and now at the same time your really good black barrel horse had a suspensory injury, so he's out of work essentially, and you actually start him on the Equinety during this time.
Yes.
Right. And then the other thing you were telling me, how often were you injecting your horse?
I injected him every 3 months.
Mm-hmm. And during that year, now you're going through rehab, and which I called a sympathy injury for your horse. Just,
Yeah.
Why should you do all the suffering when he could do the same? So now your rehab took about 2 years because you didn't even know if you were ever even going to ride again. And what did you find after a year of your horse being on Equinety as far as specifically with the injections? What did you find?
I didn't have to take him. Every time I would take him, even though my vet every 3 months, he probably got sick of me. But I was like, I think he needs this injection. And he told me, no, he's 100% sound. He doesn't need anything. And I was like, wow, his toxin staples need to be injected, and that's what caused his suspensory issues. So I couldn't believe that he didn't have to be injected but twice a year now.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things that we found. We get that feedback all the time with injected horses that no matter how many times they need the injections or receive the injections per year, when they're on the Equinety, it's drastically reduced, and sometimes they don't have to give it at all. It just depends on the scenario of what's going on, and 100% at the advice of the veterinarian and the owner, obviously, who knows their horses very well. So that's pretty exciting news from that aspect. Now, as you jumping ahead, you're now a year in, and you still don't know where you are because you're kind of laid up, and but you also had another horse, which you have a nickname of Slick Rick, which you had owned since he was 5 months old.
Yes, we bought him for a better future.
Right. If we go back about 6 months or so, that was 6 or 7 months now, I guess, back in late September, Slick Rick, you were feeding him. Tell us what happened there.
I went to feed him out in the pasture, and he looked a little wobbly. First thing caught in my mind was, oh my gosh, he has EPM. He's walking up to me like he doesn't even have his balance. So the closer he got up to me out in the pasture, he literally I dumped the feed and just fell right down. And I just was like, oh my gosh, he really has a severe case of EPM. Like it's over. Well, I hooked up to the trailer immediately. I tried to get him up. I got him up. We were walking out of the gate, and he fell again. I was screaming. I was all alone. My husband was out hauling cattle. I didn't have anybody there to help me get him up. And I just said, I just prayed to God, please give this horse the urge to get up so I can get him to the vet. And I finally we walked really slow to the trailer, gave him a little break, got him to the trailer, got him in, and I did 20 the whole way to the vet. I called the vet. They said, just be really careful. It doesn't sound like EPM. It sounds like something else. And all I could think about was the horrible equine disease and all this other stuff that could be going on. The last thing I thought was what I found out 3 days after him being in the vet, which was West Nile.
Holy smokes. And what is what typically happens when a horse comes down with West Nile? Or what are the possible outcomes?
As many times as what I've heard from my vet, as many times as he fell, he shouldn't have gotten back up. I guess he's a fighter, and the outcome would be, my main concern was him, the fluid on the brain that West Nile put. He was there the whole time. He wasn't like or loopy or anything. He was there. He responded. It was just like his body just couldn't hold him up anymore. And I didn't know when I dropped him off at the vet if that was the last time I'd seen him. Within 3 days of being at the vet, how much weight had he lost? I went there the third day to check on him with my friend, and I walked in the stall and I just bawled. His legs were all taped up, and he just looked at me like, I'm fighting, Mom. And he lost like over 100 pounds. I mean, he didn't look like the same horse. He looked like a yearling. Well, and just in 3 days. Holy smokes. Wow. And I know this is, and you told me before we did this podcast, it was pretty emotional because of all the things that you've gone through personally and with him. That's when you see him this way in 3 days. Now, the great news, as we skip forward 2.5 to 3 weeks, what happens then? I brought him home. The vet called me and said he's going to pull through. He's a fighter. We have to keep him on this oil for his ulcers. He's going to have major ulcers from all the Banamine that was pumped through him. I brought him home. He looked like a horse that got the crap beat out of him by himself. And I brought him home, and I started him right away on Equinety. And a month after, he just kept blossoming and blossoming every day. he grew stronger and stronger every single day.
And so all the weight he had put all the weight back on, looks better than ever.
He looks amazing. His growth was a little stunned, but I'll take that.
Yeah, when taking that or the other potential outcome, absolutely. So how long is he? I guess you got him back home. You sent him out to the trainer, and then how soon did the trainer start working with him?
He was in the trainer in December, which was a huge, awesome just the outcome to his, from West Nile. 3 months later, he's at the trainer. So he just came home yesterday. He was at the trainer. She started riding him the day after he got there. She let him settle in the first day, and he just took to it. He's super special to her. He's super special with so many, and we've decided to hold him back from maturating this year to let him do his 5 year, to let him grow a little bit more.
Sure. So he was at the trainers for about a month. You got him back this January. No, I'm sorry. He went to the trainers around January, and then and
I got him back.
You just got him back a few days ago.
Friday.
Right.
Yep.
So he's been on Equinety all this time, and this might be appear to be a setup kind of a question, which it kind of is, but it's also the reason why we're doing the podcast. What is your opinion with how he's recovered with the Equinety? I mean, versus what you think it might have been without the Equinety.
Well, when I first started talking to you a few years ago about, Equinety, and, I wasn't a supplement giver. So my opinion on it, it helps with amino acids, the brain, everything, the body condition, you name it, it helps it. I tried a lot of supplements. I just had a good feeling about this. It gave me hope. I'm throwing him on Equinety the day he gets home, and that's what I did.
And so now he just, as you say, he's blossoming more and more every day. So he's like 100% recovered, sound, everything.
He is 100% covered, 110% sound. He's wicked smart, a little too smart. But.
So it sounds like we have a secondary horse that also had a sympathetic thing going on. So your first horse had sympathy injury. Your second horse, a very sympathetic and scary thing going on. And I didn't mention this before to anyone, and it's a little bit now out of the timeline. But I think one of the most inspiring and important things to hear from you. So you went through 2 years of recovery, and then tell us what you did within 2 to 4 months after you were, quote, released to maybe start riding again, which you didn't think you would ever be able to ride again. But tell everybody what you did within 2 to 4 months after you were released to ride.
I got back on the horse that pulled the hot walker down on me.
If that's not crazy right there. I mean, but again, it's what was the line you told me to jump, or that your dad told you?
My dad told me you have to override your fears. So I did that.
I would say if that's not overriding fears, I don't know what is. And I tell you what, hearing this story, if it doesn't send goosebumps down your spine, might check your pulse there, because there's 3 just amazing things of loss of hope to complete comebacks, all in one little farm, which is absolutely amazing. Wow, I'm somewhat lost for words, I tell you that. But now with Slick Rick, now that he's back and blossoming every day, what are your future plans with him?
Well, yesterday, I've waited 3 years to jump on this horse, and yesterday I finally got to ride Slick Rick, from him being home from the trainer and everything else. My plans with him are we are going to let him breed some mares this year. He is a stud. Let him breed some mares in May that are booked to him. And we plan to ranch on him a little bit this summer, get his mind off of that hard training that he did with Lauren Strauss. And she put an amazing hand on him. I feel more comfortable in him than any of the other horses I have. And he's a stud.
Yeah.
And then I plan to she's going to take him back in August, early September, and we are going to go into more barrel training. She did put a lot of barrel training on him, but we're going to plan to futurity him his 5-year-old year and let him grow a little bit,
awesome.
Mature.
That is great. Well, I tell you, if you're listening to this podcast and you're not inspired in more ways than one, I tell you that you might want to listen to it again. is what I would have to say. But if there's anybody that's listening to the podcast that still might be on the fence about, well, is this Equinety stuff? Does it really work? And I know a big portion of this podcast was not specifically about the Equinety product and everything else, but it's also why they're kind of listening into it. So if there's somebody that's still a little bit on the fence about trying the Equinety for the horse, what would you, other than the things that you've already talked about, is there anything else that you might have for them, advice or recommendation?
Well, I was always on the fence about any supplements, but my horses are my life, and I tell everyone what gave me hope. We all have to try supplements, and we all have tried supplements, but I had a really good feeling, especially nagging you for 3 weeks before I even tried Equinety.
Yeah.
And I just kept on asking, what does it do? What does this do? How does this work? I'm just like that. I like to do my research. Reading reviews is big. I'm sure there are supplements out there that do work, but they only work for a short amount of time, and I've been with this supplement for 3 years now. And I had a good feeling about Equinety, and it's been amazing and a life changer for my children, which have 4 legs.
Right. Well, Jordan, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to share your Equinety story, your personal story. It's so inspiring, and I hope this just really gets out there, though. The more people that listen to it, if they're going through challenges, listen to this, and they're inspired by your personal story, your stories about your horses, and just, wow, it's really, really amazing. And thank you so much for sharing your stories.
And thank you, John.
That's all for this episode of the Equinety Podcast. For more information on purchasing Equinety, be sure to visit our website at teamequinety.com, where you'll also find product information as well as more testimonials on how others have seen amazing results by implementing Equinety into their horse's supplement regime. We'll have more stories on how Equinety is helping horses worldwide right here on a future episode of the Equinety Podcast.